He once left her with nothing but unpaid bills and a broken heart. 8 years later, she's serving champagne at his billion-dollar gala. But tonight, the roles reverse. She spilled one glass of champagne, a tiny cascade of bubbles and golden liquid, and he said it, loud enough for the entire ballroom hushed in its finery and glittering with jewels to hear. Some people are just destined to serve. It wasn't a whisper. It was a pronouncement, sharp and cold, cutting through the polite murmurs. That was the moment it truly hit me. The man I once married for love, for the promise of a future, built on shared dreams and instant ramen, now only spoke in dollar signs. And I, Elena Carter, was about to cost him every last one. But not in the way he thought, not even close. My name's Elena Carter. Just 24 hours ago, my biggest worry wasn't global finance or corporate takeovers. Nope. It was whether Table 7's souffle, a temperamental little cloud of egg and air, would collapse before it even hit their plate. That, and if Mrs. Henderson from Table 4 would remember to tip more than 5% this time. Life at the Grand Aurora Hotel was a delicate balance. I waitressed there, you know, the kind of place where the carpets are so plush they feel like walking on actual clouds, softer and more luxurious than my lumpy mattress back home. And the tips. Well, if the guests were sober enough to remember their wallets and their manners, they sometimes covered a week of daycare for my daughter Lily. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. It was ours. Tonight, though, was different. Tonight wasn't just another Tuesday night shift. The city's undisputed tech king, Lucas Hawthorne, was throwing his annual gala. The whispers among the staff had been buzzing for weeks. Rumor had it he'd just closed a $40 billion merger, a number so astronomical it almost felt like a made-up fairy tale. And he wasn't about to let that achievement go unnoticed. He wanted the world to watch him celebrate, to bask in the glow of his unimaginable success. I'd worked this particular event for 3 years running, so I knew the drill like the back of my hand. Black slacks, freshly ironed, non-slip shoes because one wrong step could mean disaster, and a lecture from the manager. And a smile. Always a smile, even when your feet were screaming in protest, when your lower back felt like it was staging a rebellion, when all you wanted was 5 minutes off your feet. I also knew the cardinal rule: never ever look the guests in the eye unless they spoke to you first. Maintain a respectful distance, be efficient, be invisible. But then, the double doors to the main ballroom swung open, grand and imposing, and the crowd, a sea of designer gowns and bespoke suits, parted like a movie scene. And my gaze, against all my training and common sense, landed on a face. A face I hadn't seen in 8 long years. A face I'd last seen over lukewarm coffee grounds, a scattering of unpaid electricity bills on our tiny kitchen table, and a silence that screamed louder than any argument. Lucas Hawthorne, my ex-husband. The very same man who not so long ago couldn't afford 2-ply toilet paper, who meticulously counted out change for a cheap coffee. Now, here he was, tall, impossibly elegant, clad in a midnight blue tuxedo that looked tailor-made for a king. His watch, a glinting sapphire-studded piece of art, flashed under the opulent chandeliers, catching the light and practically mocking my chipped nail polish. He moved with an air of casual power, a confidence that was utterly foreign to the boy I'd once loved. He didn't see me yet, thank goodness. My heart, a wild, frantic drum, hammered against my ribs so hard I swear the silverware on my tray rattled in sympathy. I balanced the tray heavy with empty flutes and discarded napkins and ducked behind a massive gilded column, praying to blend into the ornate wallpaper. We'd met at 19. He'd been a scruffy garage coder fueled by cheap energy drinks and big impossible dreams. I'd been the community college girl working 2 jobs, a hopeless romantic who believed every single word he uttered about changing the world. We married in a courthouse, a quick, simple ceremony promising to build a life on love and, quite literally, ramen noodles. For a while, it was enough. For 2 years, we clung to that dream, that shared vision. But then the ramen stayed, a constant, undeniable reminder of our struggles, and the love, it just didn't. It withered under the weight of ambition and financial strain. He left one cold, desolate 2 a.m., a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a hastily scribbled note on the counter, "I can't carry anyone else's hunger." The words were etched into my memory, a permanent scar, a brutal truth. I hadn't heard his voice, hadn't seen his face, hadn't known a single thing about him in 8 years. Not a peep. And now, here he was, larger than life, sharper, colder, and utterly transformed. And I was holding a tray of mini crab cakes, my uniform a stark contrast to his tailored perfection. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was a bitter, stinging taste in my mouth. My past, my heartbreak, had just walked back into my present, draped in a fortune. Fate, it seems, has a deliciously cruel sense of humor. One second, I was meticulously rehearsing escape routes in my head, mentally mapping out the quickest way to the staff exit without being seen. The next, a guest, clearly a bit too enthusiastic about the open bar, swung an elbow out, completely oblivious. My tray, already precariously balanced, lurched. The crystal flute, brimming with expensive champagne, tipped in slow motion. A delicate arc of golden liquid sparkling under the chandeliers flew through the air and landed with a soft yet utterly catastrophic splash, right onto a pair of patent leather shoes that I knew with a sinking feeling probably cost more than my annual rent. Gasps, soft at first, then growing louder, circled like vultures scenting their prey. A collective intake of breath rippled through the nearby crowd. Before I could even stammer out an apology, before I could even process what had just happened, the woman wearing those impossibly expensive shoes shrieked. A high-pitched, indignant sound that cut through the ballroom's elegant din. "Do you have any idea what these are worth?" she practically screamed, her face contorting in disgust. I crouched instinctively, a reflex born of years in the service industry, fumbling for a napkin to blot the rapidly spreading stain. "I'm so incredibly sorry, ma'am," I mumbled, my voice barely a whisper. "Please let me get some club soda. It's excellent for champagne stains, I promise." "Leave it." A male voice, sharp and authoritative, cut through the air. It was smooth, familiar, terrifying. It was Lucas. He knelt, not to help me, not to offer a comforting word, but to inspect the damage with a clinical detachment that sent a shiver down my spine. His gaze, colder than any winter morning, swept over the shoes, then briefly over me. He straightened his eyes, the color of a frozen lake, devoid of warmth or recognition. And then he delivered the line. The line that I would later discover trended on social media before the night was even over, a viral sensation of disdain. "Some people are just destined to serve." The words hung in the air, a cruel public humiliation. Cameras suddenly appearing from seemingly nowhere clicked like hungry insects. A ripple of laughter, polite at first, then growing bolder, fluttered through the crowd. My cheeks burned, a fiery blush spreading across my face, hotter than any chafing dish in the buffet line. The heat of shame was overwhelming. I murmured another apology, barely audible, and backed away, my tray trembling in my unsteady hands. Behind me, I heard the manager's hissed whisper, sharp and urgent. "Break room. Now, Miss Carter." So I scurried off, my non-slip shoes squeaking a pathetic rhythm on the polished marble floor. Each step was a fresh shredding of my pride, a painful, tearing sensation. My ears burned with the residual laughter, the clicking cameras, Lucas's brutal words. In the sterile confines of the break room, I leaned against the stainless steel fridge, its cold surface a small comfort against the fire in my cheeks. I stared at my reflection, tired eyes framed by faint dark circles, freckles still stubbornly visible under the hotel-grade foundation. My name tag crooked, a symbol of my disarray. Lucas hadn't recognized me. Or maybe, and this thought was even more chilling, he had, and cruelty was simply his chosen form of greeting, his way of acknowledging our shared past. Either way, I decided right then in that quiet, echoing break room, I would finish my shift. I would collect my tips, meager though they might be, and I would pretend. I would pretend that the man who once whispered, "I'll love you till the stars quit burning," the boy who'd promised forever, had never ever walked back into my life. That he was just another arrogant billionaire and I was just another invisible waitress. It was the only way I could survive the rest of the night. 10 minutes later, the break room door swung open, shattering the fragile peace I'd managed to construct. It was Mr. Henderson, the manager, his usually composed face flushed, his voice hushed with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Miss Carter," he began, almost a whisper. "Mr. Hawthorne, he's requested you. Personally." My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch that left me breathless. Requested, I managed to croak the word, tasting like ash in my mouth. My mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. Was this a formal complaint? Was he going to demand my immediate dismissal? Henderson wrung his hands, his gaze darting nervously. As server for his private table, in the VIP section, he insisted. "And refusal means dismissal, Miss Carter. Immediate dismissal. Dismissal." The word echoed in the quiet room, a death knell to my precarious financial stability. I couldn't lose this job. Not now. Not when Lily's asthma meds weren't just expensive, they were non-negotiable. Not when the rent was due next week. Losing this job wasn't an option. It was a catastrophe. So, with a heavy sigh that felt like it carried the weight of the world, I nodded. I adjusted my crooked name tag, took a deep breath, and followed Mr. Henderson. Through the swinging doors, we went past the curious whispering glances of my colleagues, past the hum of the gala, to the roped-off exclusive VIP corner. Lucas sat alone, an island of composure amidst the elegant chaos. His long legs were casually crossed, a picture of relaxed power, his gaze fixed on his phone, scrolling through what I imagined were stock market updates or multi-million-dollar deals. He didn't look up as we approached. His voice when he spoke was low, almost bored, yet it carried an undeniable edge. "You're late, Elena." I said nothing, my hands moving automatically, arranging the crisp white napkins into perfect symmetrical triangles at the pristine table setting. My mind, however, was anything but calm. "Do you remember?" He continued, his voice a low rumble, "Still not looking up the night we counted stars from the hood of that junker Buick of yours? The one that always smelled faintly of burnt oil and stale coffee." My hand stilled, hovering over a water glass. He remembered, the sheer audacity of him bringing that up now. Part of me wanted to scream, part of me wanted to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the situation, but another part, a small, fragile part, felt a tiny flicker of something akin to warmth. He remembered. "I remember the mosquitoes." I answered, my voice to my immense relief staying perfectly level, betraying none of the turmoil churning inside me. "A small victory." He chuckled in a low, rich sound that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years, a sound that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just felt calculating, still sharp Elena. Good. I dislike boring people. He finally met my gaze. His eyes, those piercing winter blue eyes locking onto mine. Elena Hawthorne. Or is it Carter now? Carter! I replied the single word, a small act of defiance. Ah. Back to your maiden cage. He took a slow, deliberate sip of the sparkling water in his glass, his eyes never leaving mine. I need a personal assistant for the next 3 weeks, someone who knows my quirks, someone who understands the subtle nuances of my preferences. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The pay is $30,000, flat. 30 grand. The number hit me like a physical blow. $30,000. That wasn't just a decent tip. That was Lily's surgery fund, a deposit on a safer, brighter apartment breathing room for a year, maybe more. It was a lifeline. It was freedom. It was everything I desperately needed. But his smile, a slow, predatory curve of his lips, spelled trap. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. I have shifts here, I said, trying to sound firm, trying to cling to some semblance of control. Which I already bought out from your employer, he countered smoothly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if my life was simply a commodity to be purchased. Consider it handled. You start tomorrow. Be at my penthouse at 8 sharp. Don't be late. I should have walked away. I should have told him where he could stick his $30,000. My pride screamed at me to do so. But Lily's face, her bright, innocent smile flashed in my mind. Her future depended on me, so instead of walking, instead of refusing, I asked the words barely escaping my lips, "Why me, Lucas?" He stood then, a tall, imposing figure, and casually brushed an invisible speck of lint from his impeccably tailored lapel. Because loyalty can't be purchased, Elena. And I'm curious if that's still your currency. He paused at the edge of the VIP section, turning back to offer one last unsettling instruction. Oh, and Elena, wear the same perfume you did at 20, the cheap rosewater one. Nostalgia, you see, is incredibly profitable. He left me standing there, staring at the untouched mini crab cakes, my appetite long gone, my future suddenly terrifyingly hijacked. The aroma of his expensive cologne lingered, mingling with the scent of my own cheap rosewater, a potent, confusing cocktail of past and present. The next morning, precisely at 7:58, a sleek obsidian black car idled silently outside my modest walk-up apartment. It looked utterly out of place on my street, a gleaming predator among the worn, familiar structures. A stern-faced driver, impeccably uniformed, handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope. Inside, I found a first-class plane ticket to New York, an impossibly detailed itinerary, and a non-disclosure agreement thick as a Bible, its pages filled with legal jargon designed to protect secrets and fortunes. I signed it. What choice did I have? The ink felt heavy, sealing my fate. Lily, thankfully, was with my sister, who, bless her heart, had accepted my flimsy lie mommy's training for a big promotion. It was a half-truth, I supposed. A promotion into a world I never imagined under circumstances I never desired. In the opulent confines of Lucas Hawthorne's private jet, he didn't join me. Not directly, anyway. He sent texts instead, his instructions arriving like cryptic commands from a distant, powerful deity. Meeting at 11. Outfit on seat 3. Seat 3, a plush leather monstrosity, held a dress. Not just any dress, but a creation of silk and lace, shimmering with an understated elegance that probably cost more than my entire yearly wages combined. It was a silent yet deafening statement of his wealth and my new reality. I changed in the tiny, impossibly luxurious lavatory, the hem of the dress pooling around my feet like liquid midnight, a stark contrast to my worn sneakers. We landed. Manhattan glittered below a sprawling tapestry of light and ambition. I'd dreamed of visiting this city once with him when a single slice of New York-style pizza felt like an extravagant luxury. Now we swept through its iconic streets in a motorcade, a blur of tinted windows and hushed security. It was a dream, yes, but a gilded, suffocating one. His penthouse office overlooked Central Park, a breathtaking panorama of green and glass. He entered without so much as a greeting, his presence filling the vast space. He slid a folder across the polished mahogany table, its contents a mystery. Storyboard for the next acquisition. Smile, Elena. Look invested. Convince the board we're childhood sweethearts, reunited against all odds. That narrative, trust me, lowers their guard considerably. My blood ran cold. You want me to pretend we're back together? The words were laced with disbelief, a bitter tang in my mouth. For the cameras, yes. For public consumption, absolutely. He clarified, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. In private, your staff, Elena, my personal assistant, nothing more. My cheeks heated, a familiar blush creeping up my neck. The humiliation still fresh from the gala resurfaced with a vengeance. You humiliated me, Lucas, I whispered, the memory stinging. In front of everyone. You made me feel worthless. He loosened his tie, a casual gesture that belied the cutting nature of his words. Business requires sacrifice, Elena. Your discomfort is a small price for what I'm paying. A very small price. I hated that on paper he was right. My rational mind, the part that calculated Lily's medical bills, knew he was right. So I nodded, sealing the bargain with a silence that felt heavier than any spoken agreement. For 2 agonizing weeks, I played the part of the loving companion. I clinked flutes of champagne at glittering rooftop galas, my smile fixed and unwavering. I laughed a bright, empty sound at his carefully scripted jokes, each one a practiced performance. I wore couture fabrics that scratched my skin with their unfamiliarity, shoes that pinched my feet, a constant reminder of the uncomfortable charade. Off camera, in the fleeting moments of privacy, he treated me like furniture. Useful, yes, but ultimately replaceable. An object. Yet there were moments, fleeting glimpses. At night, sometimes I'd catch him. He'd be holding my phone, his thumb gently tracing the image of Lily's smiling face on my lock screen. He'd hand it back without a word, his eyes unreadable, a brief, almost imperceptible tightening around his jaw. Was it curiosity? A flicker of regret? I couldn't tell. I told myself it was almost over. Just a few more days and I could go back to my real life. Then came the morning, everything cracked open, the carefully constructed facade crumbling around me. I was alone in the vast, echoing penthouse, the silence punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. Lucas was out, presumably at some high-stakes meeting, leaving me to my own devices to scroll through emails and pretend to be busy. That's when the landline rang, an old-fashioned, almost archaic sound in this hyper-connected world. I glanced at the caller ID. St. Genevieve Children's Hospital. My heart lurched, a cold, icy grip squeezing my chest. Miss Carter, a nurse's voice, calm and professional, came through the receiver. We're calling regarding Lily. Her medication levels are off. We need updated paternal medical history urgently, specifically for genetic markers and blood type compatibility. My pulse stuttered, a frantic, irregular beat. Lucas had no idea she existed, no idea at all. When we split, when he walked out that cold morning 8 years ago, I didn't know I was pregnant. By the time I discovered the truth a few weeks later, a potent cocktail of pride, fear, and sheer exhaustion had built an impenetrable wall around me. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the man who had declared he couldn't carry anyone else's hunger. How could I tell him he had a daughter who would inevitably need his support, his presence, his resources? So I stayed silent, a silence that now threatened to consume us both. "Miss Carter, are you there?" The nurse's voice pulled me back to the present, to the terrifying reality. Yes, I managed my voice, a thin, reedy sound I barely recognized as my own. "Yes, I'm here. Send the forms. Please. Just send them." I hung up the phone, my hand trembling so violently I almost dropped the receiver. My heart was drumming a frantic, insistent rhythm against my ribs. The walls of the penthouse, once symbols of luxury, now felt like they were closing in, suffocating me. Lucas entered a moment later, his jacket slung casually over his shoulder, a faint smile playing on his lips, probably from a successful negotiation. He took one look at my ashen face, my wide, terrified eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Elena." "Just tired," I mumbled, trying to compose myself, trying to shove the terror back down. But it was too big, too overwhelming. He walked over to the opulent bar, pouring himself a measure of amber-colored scotch, the ice clinking softly in the silence. "Tell me something you never said, Elena." His voice was casual, but there was an underlying current of something I couldn't quite decipher. I almost laughed, a hysterical, bitter sound. If only he knew. If only he knew the monumental, life-altering secret I'd kept. Instead, I posed my own question, a desperate probe into his guarded heart. "Ever regret leaving Lucas?" He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, watching it catch the light. His gaze was distant, almost contemplative. "Regret is expensive, Elena. A luxury I couldn't afford back then, and a sentiment I choose not to indulge in now. I prefer returns on investment." But even as he said the words, so carefully rehearsed, so perfectly devoid of emotion, I saw it. A flicker. A tightening of his jaw, a subtle clenching of his hand around the glass. And for the first time, truly for the first time since he'd re-entered my life, I wondered if the glacier, that cold, impenetrable facade he presented to the world, still held rivers underneath, still held currents of emotion long buried but not entirely frozen. That night, sleep was a distant dream. I drafted resignation letters in my head, a dozen different versions, each one more desperate than the last. But I couldn't send them. I couldn't afford to. Lily needed me. And now she needed Lucas too, whether he knew it or not. The secret felt like a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode and shatter everything. The final event of this surreal two-week charade was upon us, the official vote for Lucas Hawthorne's monumental merger. And in another cruel twist of fate's capricious hand, it was being held at the very same hotel chain where I'd spilled champagne, where I'd been publicly humiliated. The Grand Aurora's sister property, equally opulent, equally intimidating. Irony, it seemed, was a constant companion in my new bizarre life. Lucas had been unusually terse that morning, his focus absolute. "Wear the blue dress, Elena," he'd instructed, his voice clipped, "the one that makes your eyes sparkle. And smile. Smile like your life depends on it, because mine for the next few hours absolutely does." I obeyed. What else could I do? I slipped into the shimmering blue silk, a garment that felt both alien and strangely powerful. I painted on the smile a practiced mask of serene confidence and walked into the gilded cage once more. The ballroom glowed a symphony of crystal and candlelight. Investors, their faces etched with anticipation, sipped expensive drinks. Deals worth more than I could ever fathom fluttered in the air, tangible yet unseen. On stage, Lucas, a commanding presence, spoke of vision, of legacy, of a future he was single-handedly shaping. His voice resonated with conviction, his words painting a picture of unstoppable success. When he finished, applause thundered a deafening roar of approval and admiration. Then came the Q&A, the inevitable gauntlet of probing questions. A reporter, sharp-eyed and relentless, rose from the crowd. "Mr. Hawthorne," he began, his voice cutting through the residual applause sources, "claim you're distracted by personal entanglements. Care to comment on the rumors surrounding your companion?" His gaze flickered pointedly to me. Lucas's hand surprisingly found mine. His fingers, strong and warm, intertwined with mine, a public display of affection that sent a jolt through me. "Just reconnecting with my greatest supporter," he said, his voice calm, his eyes meeting the reporters with an unwavering intensity. "Someone who understands my journey better than anyone." Cameras pivoted their lenses, hungry for the story. I felt the old humiliation resurface, a hot flush spreading across my chest. Was this just another calculated move? Another performance for the cameras? Afterward, seeking a moment of respite, I slipped out onto the sprawling terrace, the cool night air a welcome balm. But even their escape was fleeting. The same woman from months ago, the one with the champagne-splashed shoes, sidled up to me, a sneer twisting her perfectly made-up face. "Well, well, well," she purred, her voice dripping with venom. The little waitress playing Billionaire's fiancé. How quaint, how utterly predictable. I smiled sweetly, a saccharine fake smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Enjoy the crab cakes, darling," I said, my voice equally sweet, equally fake. "They're surprisingly good tonight." She sneered again, her eyes narrowing. "Once trash, always apologize." Lucas's voice, sharp and sudden, cut through her sentence, startling both of us. He had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, a dark, imposing shadow against the glittering city lights. The woman blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me." To Ms. Carter. "Now." His voice was low, dangerous, leaving no room for argument. Silence rippled through the small group of onlookers who had gathered, drawn by the confrontation. Guests stared, their conversations dying down. The woman, clearly unused to being challenged, mumbled a hasty, barely audible sorry and fled, her expensive shoes clicking rapidly on the terrace tiles. I exhaled a long, shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Stunned. Utterly stunned. Lucas leaned close, his voice a low growl that only I could hear. "No one insults what's mine, Elena. I'm not yours." I retorted, the words coming out sharper than I intended. The possessiveness in his tone, while unexpected, was still unnerving. "No," he said softly, his gaze intense, searching mine. "But you were, and I protect my assets, even past ones." Something in his tone, a raw, almost vulnerable quality, made my chest ache. It wasn't just about property or status anymore. It was something deeper, something far more complicated. And it scared me. The vote was tallied. The merger, Lucas's crowning achievement, was approved. Champagne corks popped, a joyous explosion of celebration. Lucas, the victorious king, vanished into a throng of congratulating investors and fawning executives. I, feeling like an imposter in my borrowed finery, slipped away, a desperate need for solitude overwhelming me. I found myself in the hotel's staff break room. The same stainless steel fridge, the same familiar cracks in the floor tiles, a stark anchor to my reality amidst the opulent illusion. My phone buzzed. St. Genevieve Children's. Again. This time, the urgency in the caller ID was palpable, a red flag flapping wildly in my peripheral vision. I called back immediately, my fingers fumbling with the keys. Dr. Evans Lilly's pediatrician was on the line. Her voice, usually so reassuring, was now laced with a professional gravity that chilled me to the bone. "Miss Carter," she began without preamble. "Lily's liver function is declining rapidly. We need to explore all options. We need the father's blood type, his full medical history for match probability. It's critical. We can't stall any longer." Tears blurred my vision, hot and stinging, as I stumbled out of the break room and into a deserted hallway. The words echoed in my ears, declining rapidly. Critical. Can't stall. I couldn't hide it anymore. I couldn't protect Lucas from this truth or Lily from the consequences of my silence. I found Lucas in the main corridor, surrounded by a laughing, back-slapping entourage. His face was beaming, flushed with triumph. "Lucas!" I interrupted, my voice raw, breaking through the celebratory din. "I need to talk to you. Now." He took one look at my tear-streaked face, my desperate eyes, and his triumphant smile vanished. His expression sobered instantly, the laughter dying in his throat. He dismissed his entourage with a curt nod and led me without a word into a nearby, thankfully empty boardroom. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing us in a bubble of impending confession. The words tumbled out of me, a torrent of long-held secrets. 8 years of fear and silence, finally breaking free, the unexpected pregnancy, the overwhelming fear, the decision to keep it from him after he left. Lily's birth, her fragile health, the endless hospital calls, the constant worry. I ended with the stark, undeniable truth. "She's yours, Lucas. Lily is your daughter." He stood statue still, his face a mask of shock, disbelief, and something else. A flicker of profound pain. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my ragged breathing. Then his voice, when it came, was gravelly raw, barely recognizable. "Why didn't you tell me, Elena? Why did you keep this from me?" "I was scared," I whispered, the old wounds aching. "You left. You said you couldn't carry anyone else's hunger. I thought you wouldn't want her, that you'd see her as a burden. I left," broke Elena. "Not heartless," he countered, his voice rising, a tremor of anger in his tone. "I was a boy full of pride and empty pockets. I was a fool, but I wasn't a monster." Silence descended again, thick and heavy, punctuated by the frantic drumming of my heart. Then he moved, not towards me, but away, pacing the length of the boardroom like a caged storm, his movements restless, agitated. His hand raked through his perfectly styled hair. "What does she need? What do we do?" The shift was immediate, from shock and anger to decisive action. The billionaire, the man of business, was back, but now with a fierce paternal urgency. "Possibly a partial liver transplant," I explained the medical terms, feeling foreign on my tongue. "Tests first, to see if there's a match, to see if you're even a candidate." He nodded, his face grim, already calculating, planning. All business yet, his eyes. Those cold winter blue eyes glistened with an unmistakable sheen of unshed tears. "Book the jet, Elena. We leave tonight. Immediately." I almost collapsed from relief, the tension that had held me captive for so long, finally beginning to dissipate. "Thank you." I choked out the words, thick with emotion. "Thank you, Lucas. Thank." He paused at the door, his hand on the cold metal, and turned back to face me. His gaze was intense, searching something fierce and tender, igniting within their depths. "This changes everything, Elena. Not just for her, for us." "There is no us, Lucas," I said, my voice barely a whisper, still reeling from the day's revelations. He met my gaze, a challenging yet hopeful spark in his eyes. "Then we build one. Brick by brick, Elena. Starting now." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the boardroom, the echoes of his words and the enormity of what had just transpired swirling around me. My world had just been irrevocably altered. On the private jet soaring through the night sky towards the hospital, the silence between us was different now. It wasn't the strained, calculating silence of our fake relationship, but a heavy, raw quiet, pregnant with unspoken history. Finally, Lucas spoke, his voice low, almost contemplative, as if he were recounting a story from another lifetime. He spoke of the years after he left, the ones I knew nothing about. He hadn't just magically transformed into a billionaire overnight. He'd sold his beat-up laptop, the one he'd coded on for endless hours in our tiny apartment, for a pittance. He'd coded in grimy internet cafes fueled by stale coffee and sheer desperation. He'd lived on the edge, constantly hustling. Then, by what he called dumb luck and sheer force of will, he'd landed seed money. A venture capitalist, impressed by a hastily thrown-together demo, saw something in him, a spark of genius amidst the rough edges, and from there it had snowballed. Investments piled on investments. Deals bred more deals. Wealth immense and unimaginable became his armor, a shield against the hunger he'd once felt, against the vulnerability he'd once known. I told myself, he confessed, his gaze fixed on the dark window, reflecting the distant city lights, that if I got big enough, rich enough, powerful enough, I'd never feel empty again. I'd never be that scared, hungry kid again. He paused, a deep sigh escaping him. But every zero on the screen, Elena, every new billion, every new acquisition, it just felt hollow, like an echo in a vast empty room. I listened, truly listened for the first time in years. And in that moment, understanding dawned. His cruelty, his coldness, the cutting words and the calculated distance, it hadn't been his essence. It had been scar tissue, a thick protective layer built over deep wounds, a desperate attempt to protect the vulnerable boy he once was. At the hospital, the sterile smell and hushed urgency were a stark contrast to the opulence we'd just left. Lucas, without a moment's hesitation, rolled up his sleeve. His face was pale, drawn, but his resolve was iron. Tests were run. The results came back. A match. A perfect, life-saving match. Surgery was scheduled for the following morning. News, as it always does when billions are involved, leaked. Headlines screamed, "Tech mogul's secret daughter revealed billionaire's paternity scandal." Rocks industry. Paparazzi, like a ravenous swarm, descended on the hospital, their flashes illuminating the night. Lucas instantly hired a small army of security shielding Lily's window, protecting her fragile privacy from the invasive glare of the world. In the quiet hours as the city slept, we sat by Lily's bedside, trading memories not of our past, but of her short, precious life. I told him about her first steps, her favorite lullaby, her quirky habit of drawing stars on everything. He listened, his eyes fixed on her tiny, sleeping form, absorbing every detail. Lily nestled between us, tiny oxygen tubes, a stark reminder of her struggle stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at Lucas, then at me. Her voice a weak, reedy whisper. "Are you my daddy?" Lucas's voice, when he answered, was thick with emotion cracking under the weight of it. "I am sweetheart. I am your daddy, and I'm never leaving you. Never again." She smiled then, a weak but miraculous curve of her lips, a tiny spark of joy in her pale face. My heart, which had been a fractured, aching thing for so long, slowly, painstakingly began to stitch itself back together, piece by painful piece. The media frenzy fueled by Lucas's sudden revelation and the impending surgery peaked. It became a weapon in the hands of his rivals. A particularly ruthless board member, smelling blood in the water, used the personal scandal as leverage, demanding Lucas step down from his empire. An emergency meeting was called, a high-stakes corporate battle unfolding while his daughter fought for her life. Lucas, ever the strategist, prepared statements. Lawyers buzzed around him like angry wasps, offering legal advice, strategizing defenses. I felt guilt claw at me, a sharp, twisting pain in my gut. This was all because of me, because of my secret. The night before the crucial vote, I found him in the dimly lit hospital lounge, his face etched with exhaustion, but his eyes burning with an unyielding determination. "You'll lose everything, Lucas," I whispered the words, heavy with dread. "Your company, your life's work, all of it." He shrugged a dismissive gesture, but his eyes held a depth of emotion I'd rarely seen. "I once chose empire over family, Elena. I won't make that mistake again. Not with Lily, but your life's work." I pressed, my voice breaking. "The company you built from nothing. It's everything to you. It means nothing." He stated, his voice firm, resolute. "If I can't tuck my daughter in at night, if I can't be there to watch her grow up, if I can't be a father." I stared at him, at this man who had, in the space of a few short weeks, shed the arrogance of a billionaire for the fierce, protective love of a father. Something profound shifted inside me. The glacier had not just melted, it had cracked wide open, revealing a powerful, rushing river beneath. Meeting day dawned tense and fraught. Shareholders, some present, some assembled via hologram link from around the globe, filled the virtual room. Lucas, against the advice of his lawyers, stood before them. He spoke not of profit margins or market share, but of ethics, of integrity, of the true meaning of legacy. He spoke of family. Then, with a quiet strength that resonated through the room, he introduced Lily. A pre-recorded video showing her frail but smiling, wearing his oversized ball cap, a symbol of their nascent bond. He spoke of her courage, of his commitment to her, and his belief that true success was measured not in billions, but in human connection. The motion to oust him failed by 92%, a resounding victory not for his wealth but for his humanity. Afterward, he found me on the hospital roof, the city sprawling beneath us, a vast glittering expanse. Sunset bled gold and fiery orange across the sky, painting the clouds in impossible hues. "I'm stepping down anyway," he said, his voice calm, resolute. The words, spoken so casually, sent a shockwave through me. "I want time, real time, with her, with you." My eyes welled up, tears blurring the magnificent cityscape. "You'd walk away from billions, from everything you built." He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Money returns, Elena. It always does. Childhood doesn't. Time with Lily, that's irreplaceable." I stepped closer, the wind whipping gently between us, carrying the scent of exhaust and distant rain. "I don't know how to trust again, Lucas." I confessed the words, a raw, honest admission of my deepest fear. "Then let me earn it," he replied, his voice soft, earnest. "One diaper, one school play, one burnt pancake at a time. Let me show you." I laughed, a watery, joyful sound, tears streaming down my face. He opened his arms wide and welcoming. I walked into the embrace I hadn't known. I longed for the one I thought I'd lost forever. Years of ache, of loneliness, of unspoken grief exhaled from my very being. We stood there holding each other as the city lights began to twinkle below, not as symbols of empire, but of a new fragile hope. We began to plan our quiet life, a future built on shared moments, not shared balance sheets. Maybe a seaside cafe. We mused something simple, honest. We talked about school districts, about pediatricians, about the mundane, beautiful details of a real family. Then the call came. It was a lawyer. Not Lucas's, but a firm I'd never heard of. They asked for Elena Carter maiden name. My great-aunt, the one I'd never met, a distant relative I barely knew existed, had passed away, and she'd left a trust. A trust now valued at, are you ready for this, $43 billion? Billion, with a B. Mining royalties diversified decades ago, invested wisely, growing exponentially. She'd named me Elena Carter, her sole heir. But there was a stipulation, a condition written in elegant script: when you show the world you value family above fortune. The paperwork, the lawyer explained, had been lodged with the courts the exact minute Lucas announced his resignation from his company. The very minute he chose Lily over his empire. It was as if the universe, or my eccentric great-aunt, had been watching, waiting for that precise moment of selfless choice. I was technically richer than Lucas, by billions. I stared at the certificate, the numbers swimming before my eyes. $43 billion. It was so utterly, profoundly absurd. I started to laugh, a wild, incredulous peal that quickly dissolved into tears. Tears of disbelief, of overwhelming irony. Lucas watched me bemused, a slow smile spreading across his face. So he said, his voice filled with gentle wonder, "You're the billionaire now." "Looks like it." I managed to choke out, still laughing, still crying. He grinned, a playful glint in his eyes. "Guess I'll be the kept man then. I've always wanted to try that lifestyle." I shoved him playfully, then grew sober, the enormity of it settling in. "No," I said, my voice firm. "We use it, together, for Lily's future, for others, for the world, Lucas. We don't just keep it." He kissed my forehead, a tender, lingering touch. "That's why you deserve it, Elena, more than anyone I know." Lily recovered faster than anyone predicted. Children's resilience, the doctors said, a miraculous capacity for healing. Her laugh, once fragile, now rang through the house, a joyous melody. Lucas, true to his word, donated his controlling shares in his tech empire to a foundation for pediatric transplants, ensuring countless other children would have the chance Lily did. He kept a modest consulting stake, enough to keep his mind sharp, but his priorities had irrevocably shifted. We didn't move into a sprawling mansion. Instead, we found a house. A simple, sturdy house with a big yard where chalk drawings of rockets and rainbows now adorned the driveway. It wasn't about status. It was about space, to grow space, to play space, to simply be. Lucas learned to grocery shop, much to his exasperation. He argued with coupons, a surprisingly endearing trait for a former tech titan. He even burnt pasta more than once while singing off-key to Lily's favorite cartoon theme songs. He was learning day by day to be a dad, to be a partner, to be a man unburdened by the relentless pursuit of wealth. I, with my newfound unimaginable fortune, funded scholarships for single parents, built a state-of-the-art neonatal ward in St. Genevieve, and supported countless other causes. I did it anonymously because the humility of giving, the quiet joy of making a difference, felt like sunlight on my skin. It felt like real wealth. One evening, after tucking Lily into bed, her room glowing with the soft light of rocket-shaped nightlights on the ceiling, she looked up at us. "Are you two getting married again?" she asked, her voice sleepy and innocent. Lucas and I exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between us, a shared smile. The very next day, Lucas proposed. Not at a glittering gala, not with a diamond the size of a pigeon's egg. He proposed in the same greasy diner where we'd first shared a slice of pie all those years ago when we were just kids with dreams and empty pockets. There were no cameras, no flashing lights, just the scent of coffee steam rising between us and the quiet promise of a future. I said yes, not because he was a billionaire or because I now was, but because we'd learned through years of pain and profound change that love isn't a balance sheet. It's choosing each other every single day, especially when the numbers drop to zero or when they suddenly soar beyond comprehension. It's choosing the person, not the price tag. We wed in that same courthouse, a simple ceremony just like the first time. Our daughter Lily, her eyes bright with joy, was our flower girl, scattering petals with boundless enthusiasm. No press, no fanfare, just us, a small, perfect circle of family. As we exited tin cans rattling merrily behind a second-hand car, a symbol of our new grounded life, I whispered to him, "Some people are destined to serve Lucas, to serve kindness back into the world, to serve hope." He laughed, a genuine, full-throated laugh, his eyes bright with happiness. "And some, Elena," he countered, squeezing my hand, "are destined to spill champagne, and in doing so change fate, for the better." We drove off, windows down, the radio crackling out a familiar, hopeful tune. Behind us the city glimmered not as a monument of empires built and lost, but as the backdrop for a fresh start, a brand new beginning brimming with possibility. So, here's the question for you. If everything you thought you needed, power, status, unimaginable wealth, suddenly cost nothing, you truly valued, what would you do with tomorrow? Would you hold on to the billions, or would you give them all back for just one more bedtime story, one more genuine laugh, one more moment of true connection? Drop your answer below in the comments. And if you believe second chances taste better when they're shared and that endings can shock in the sweetest, most unexpected ways, then smash that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who needs reminding that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in vaults, but in the human heart.